Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
Welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Good moment. This is Barnet Bain. Freeman is away. Sandy Stewart is away. So it's me and Spence here. Just us chickens. How are you, Spence?
Great.
Spence is great. So, some things on my mind this morning. I've been thinking about creativity a lot. I've been doing some work, as some of you who are longtime listeners know, that I do quite a bit of work in the area of creativity. So there is a gorgeous greeting card that is sitting on my desk. It's been there for years. The card says, the most visible creators I know of are those artists whose medium is life itself. They neither paint nor sculpt. Their medium is being. Whatever their presence touches has increased life. They see and don't have to draw. They are the artists of being alive. So as I said, I found this on a card a bunch of years ago, and it moved me so profoundly that I've posted it over my desk. I look at this every day. This thing kind of sears into my awareness, and I never find it any less moving. There's something so profound about that, because we're also conditioned to believe that creativity is found in what you do, that I'm only as good as what I do. And if I have no interest in creating a circus or a business or a work of art or a painting or a symphony, then somehow I'm not a creative individual. And this gorgeous card reminds me that nothing could be further from the truth, that we're all always creating every moment, every instant of the day. And I think that if there was anything that I wanted that I would love to be remembered for, standing for caring about, for inspiring in people close to me and people less close to me, it's this idea that we are all creating all of the time, with every thought and with every feeling, with every emotion. There is a creative expression happening. So why don't we know that? I mean, why don't we necessarily know that our relationships are creative acts, or how I deal with a person bagging my groceries? Why don't I necessarily know that that's a creative act? It's a good question. Spence, you got any answers to that?
My answer to that is, if it's really creative, it would pay better. And I hate to rank everything on the dollar, because I think that's the disease of the creative mind. We all think it's not real until we sell it.
That's so great. So, there's something that's called the gift economy. And inside the gift economy, there is really either there is only creative acts, or there's no room for creative acts. Precisely because of this sort of mindset you're talking about. If we can't sell it, then does anything have any value? So I'm interested in where this thinking came from. I don't think that anybody is hatched into this into the world, and that we come in with this assumption that if there's no market value to who I am or what I'm doing and what I'm bringing in the world, that I don't have any worth. So I thought about this, and it occurred to me that, well, if I asked you to draw me a picture, of an alien from another planet, well, you might draw me something that's wild and weird and wonderful. It might be just fantastic, but more than likely, it's going to look like something from the bar scene in Star Wars, right? It's going to be vaguely humanoid. But why wouldn't it be something that we wouldn't recognize as a alien or a creature at all? I mean, why wouldn't it be something that we wouldn't recognize as a life form? So that's a rhetorical question because I have the answer. I'm going to answer it that way. It's faster.
Well, tell us, because I would draw something with arms and legs.
I know.
would drop
You'd
something,
you'd have eyes, probably have little antennas hanging off the top of its head.
6 or 7. Maybe.
6 or 7 of them, so that we know it's not just a human form. It's a team. It would be a team. So I think the reason is that we're products of our environments, our families, our countries, our cultures, our educational process, the religions, the churches that we go to, the television we watch, the songs we listen to on the radio. So all this stuff comes in, the signs we see out the window, it all comes in, and it sort of creates the lines around how we perceive ourselves and the world. So we're always without knowing it, we're always painting inside the lines. And the lines have been created for us by others. It's always somebody else's belief system. And inside that, we kind of think that we have free will, that our ideas around politics, our ideas around love, our ideas around creativity, our ideas around everything, we think they're ours. The truth is, they are. We have a very short selection. It's a very short menu of options that we're given as a result of this conditioning. I call it structured imagining. We have this infinite imagination, but it's structured by the environments that we live in and the way we are raised and the way we're brought up. And so by the time we get only a little ways into the process of being structured, we have a range of options. We don't know that that is a subset of an infinite range. We think it's all that is. And we choose what we think we're expressing free will inside of that. So this structured imagining, it's a barrier to a real creative expression, and it's a barrier to really understanding how infinitely creative we are. We just think, I'm not an artist of being alive. I have no abilities. There's nothing wonderful about me, and I don't have any sense that every choice I'm making, with every breath that I take, with every thought that I think, that there's some choice making behind that. There's some absolute choice making behind that. So the implications of this are what? Well, I think to begin with, we are constantly creating every moment without any awareness. We're constantly doing iterations of the past. I'm willing to be totally wrong about this. I want to be totally wrong about this, but I have a nagging inside suspicion that I'm not wrong about this at all, that we are constantly recreating the past. History is repeating itself not only in the broadest terms, but I think history is repeating itself over and over again in the way we live our lives individually. So I wake up this morning, and the first thing that comes up for me is this nagging feeling that there's a problem, and I'm feeling a little insecure. I have some projects that I'm working on, but I immediately wake up thinking, oh, there's a problem, or I'm worried about, are they going to unfold? And as I'm thinking about this, it occurs to me that I am creating a bunch of stories, a bunch of issues that I'm making up because I don't know that there's a problem. So I'm creating something right now. And that what I'm creating has nothing to do with the present moment. I'm bringing to the present moment some history of being disappointed in the past and making stories about things that could go wrong. Those are accumulated. That's from the past. I'm not even conscious that I'm doing this, right? I'm putting the Humpty Dumpty back together again, lying in bed next to my very warm and beautiful wife, who is not yet a part of this, but in 5 minutes she's going to wake up and I'm going to draw her into this morass of going back to the past and looking for pieces of evidence of disappointment and bringing them to the present. It happens in a blink of an eye. We're not even aware of it. And it's a creative act. It's not a helpful act. It's not a productive act, but it is a creative act. So I suddenly become aware that I'm harvesting unconsciously from my whole life experience. I'm selectively looking for experiences that are in some way vaguely similar to the challenges that I'm facing right now around these projects, and automatically laying them over the circumstances now, and I'm starting to have bad feelings. So now Sandy does wake up. I'm sitting there, I'm probably sitting there like a rain cloud, sitting next to her, in bed next to her, and she wakes up and she can feel the rain cloud. She says, well, what's up? And I share with her some of my anxieties, and she says to me, wow, is any of that stuff really happening? No, it's not really happening. I'm just anticipating it. She said, so you're actually creating drama. There's nothing going on. You're just creating drama. Now I'm inspired. It suddenly shifts from being a rain cloud fest to a moment of inspiration. I'm suddenly inspired because I realize, my goodness, this is some kind of a pattern that I can become increasingly aware of going forward in the future. It's like, does the present really come out of the past? Is the present really the result of the past? Or is it the result of this sort of structured imagining that I talked about earlier? Is it the result of a tendency to kind of thread back to our past experiences, our past hurts, our past disappointments, and automatically import them into the present, thereby precluding me from living in the present, by the way? Just a little aside. I'm not actually in the present because I'm in the present. There's nothing is going on. So I say to Sandy, is the present the result of the past? And she looks at me like, this is really too early in the morning for the whole deal. What is your problem? But now I'm off and running. Now I am creative. Now I am creating. Is the present the result of the past? And if so, am I like a snowball rolling downhill, gathering mass, gathering weight, becoming more and more of my snowballiness? Is that really the way it works? It's certainly a way that it works. There's no question about it. That is certainly a way that it can work. But is it the only way that works? Is that the only kind of causation there is? So I seriously doubt it. Not because I am any kind of physicist or student of physics, although I wouldn't be solo rambling with you all on the show today had my physicist guests not blown us off. But having given a little thought to what we were going to talk about with the physicist guest who blew us off, it occurs to me that the whole of quantum physics, I know you're all driving right now wherever you're going, and you're all thinking, yeah, I know everything there is to know about quantum physics. So I'll just share enough of what you need to know for purposes of this conversation. Quantum physics holds a number of things, including that nothing is real, nothing is manifested in our universe until it is observed. And that before it is observed, energy exists either as a wave of probability or a particle that exists in time and space. But what happens, how that happens, how it shifts from one to the other is a quantum leap. It's mysterious. And it doesn't happen until there is an observer. And it is the function of observing that makes it go from a wave of probability to an actuality. So that is not snowballs rolling down hills, Spence. No, it's not. That is, I choose what I have an expectancy about what I am going to experience. I choose it, and then it precipitates after the fact. So that is not an upward causation, like one step leading to the next step, leading to the next step. That is sort of a downward causation where there is something mysterious and wonderful, larger, that is expressing downward. Well, that's really not the past is the result of the present is the result of the past. That's more like the present is the result of the future. I think with that little nugget, we should probably put the clutch in, take a break, pay some bills, come back, and I'll see if I can dig myself either deeper into this hole or out of it. We'll be right back after these words.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
Thank you. Welcome back. This is Barnet. I'm back with you. You are back with me on Cutting Edge Consciousness. So during the break, my sage pal and producer Spence says, yeah, geez, this makes so much sense, because why is it that stuff seems to happen over and over in my life? And then I say stuff like, geez, this happens every time. It happens every time. Well, if it happens every time, then what is the origin of these recurrent patterns? How is it that we manage to kind of keep threading back to the same sorts of patterns and behaviors, creating and recreating over and over again? What are the origins of these? I think it is part of this structured imagining, and I think that it comes to a point where it gets laid into our neurology. We have these thing that is very current now, very much in vogue, are the discussions around neuroplasticity. And this is the in brain science. This is the idea that you can teach old dogs new tricks. It's just that old dogs have their behaviors wired by use. They're literally wired into their brain function, and because the way the brain is wired, the axons and the dendrites, because the energy follows attention, and the attention is going through the neural maps in a particular way, those maps are reinforced and reinforced and reinforced and reinforced, and it becomes harder to make changes in them. However, when we do make changes in them, entirely new maps are made, whole new neural maps are made, and with consistency and commitment. This is why we have this notion of practice. I think it was, who was it that wrote was it Seth Godin, or the 10,000 hour rule or something? If you practice something, whether it's flying a plane or baking cakes or whatever it is, for 10,000 hours, that you have devoted enough attention to forging neural brain maps, and the old ones, through lack of use, begin to atrophy. At some point, they entirely disappear. We lose them. They just fade from memory, the way my Thanksgiving dinners from 40 years ago, by and large, have faded from memory. So we have a very new plastic notion, an elastic notion of how the brain works. And this is very different from when I was very small and growing up. The belief at that point was that our capacities were God-given, if you believed in God, or they were circumstantial if you did not believe in God, and that they were written in stone, and you played the same hand of cards that you were dealt. You took them right to the end of days, and that's not the case now. So this is good news for those of us that are taking a hard look at this sort of structured imagining. And for you, Spence, I can't freaking figure out why this is happening again and again and again every time. And there are even habituated neural maps. Another way of talking about habits is to talk about them as neural maps. They're literally neural maps. They can be drawn and redrawn with practice. So you said something else that I love during the break: create from the future and push from the past. That's really great. That's super. So we've always been doing this, it seems to me. It's certainly, now that I look back at it with 20/20 hindsight, I can sort of see how the logic and reason game, I grew up with that. My dad was really big on the facts. the facts, logic and reason, the facts. So the facts were this leads to that, and that leads to that, and that leads to that, and we evolve in certain linear ways. We have this love affair with the straight line. Those are the facts. But it's pretty clear that creatives for the future and pushes for the past, and they're both happening simultaneously. It's more complicated than it's just the facts. So, again, we have this kind of upward causation, push from the past, and we also have this downward causation, the quantum. What you expect is what you're going to create. And, that when I realized that has, even in science, that has always been a stealth operating principle. So there's been there's been this idea of take my advice, I'm not using it around downward causation in science, because at the same time as there was this love affair with the facts and the empirical evidence, scientists had this thing called double blind, is it, or double blind? Double blind, right? Double blind testing. And the point of double blind testing, blah, 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 it sounds like double bubble testing. The point of double blind testing is that researchers discovered that if the people they were researching knew anything about the agenda of the experiment, that it would influence the results of the experiment. And so they had these double-blind procedures, which meant that the participants were shielded, blinded from any awareness of what the experiment was about, so that they could not have any thoughts or feelings, emotions, or expectations around it that might prejudice the results. So, let's just push back on that for 1 second. And in a world of logic, pure logic and facts and reason, they're saying that if they knew anything about what the experiment was about, that it might influence their biochemistry if they're researching drugs, or it might influence their thinking and feeling, their emotions. On the one hand, science has always said that consciousness and emotions are an epiphenomenon of physical life, of the brain, of chemistry. But on the other hand, let's do about double blind just in case there are mysterious communications going on below the surface of the facts. So all of this is it's exciting. It's weird and it's exciting. I don't know. It's so much richer than having just the facts, to know that, there are facts, and then there are even superseding sets of facts. There are facts, and then there are whole pieces of reality creation that are not dealing with the facts, at least in the way that we know them, at least in the cha-cha-cha, you put your right foot here, your left foot here, and they're not predictable in this way of knowing things. So back to, I'm lying in bed with San, and she's saying, really? So you're nervous about your movie project? And I said, well, I'm not really nervous, but I'm not feeling as confident about this aspect today as I could. And as I look more deeply into it, I'm realizing, well, I'm feeling the same kind of insecurity and helplessness around this little particular area. And she says, well, where is it? This is not the first time in our 34 years of marriage that I've seen this sort of behavior from you. It's not even the first time this week. So, what, as Spence, as you said, well, what? I can't freaking believe that this is happening again. It happens every time. Where is this coming from? As I look a little closer, it starts to get clear to me, well, it's coming from my past. And the farther back I get, the more pure an expression of those fears, those anxieties, those apprehensions, the more pure they become. And when I go really far back, the farthest, all right, I'll go as far back, I'll go anecdotally far back. So I was thinking, what was going on at the time my mom was carrying me? When she was pregnant, what was going on in her life? Why is it, as you say, Spence, that I can't freaking believe this is happening again? It happens every time. Why? Where does this come from? So then I was thinking, well, what was going on? Let's just go right back. I've had probably $250,000 of therapy in the last 30 years, so I didn't figure it out there. Let's go farther back than that. What was going on when my mom was pregnant with me? So I take a look. Well, she was in the middle of a divorce. She's pregnant with me, and they're in divorce court divorcing. And it comes out that, well, my dad's family, they both married very, very young, 17 years old. They're both at the time of the divorce. And my dad's family thinking it's probably not such a good idea. And somebody says, well, maybe it should be, maybe we should terminate this pregnancy. Oh, but that's illegal. But never mind that that's illegal. So here I am, this pre-birth life form. I may not be, maybe I'm not following it in English, but I'm certainly drinking in the whole chemical soup of everything that's going on in my mother's biology. I am one with her biology, right? I'm drinking in the whole chemical martini, the whole cocktail shaken, not stirred. I'm taking it all in, every piece of it. I never talked to her about this, but I'm assuming middle of a divorce proceeding, all of this is going on. She's stressed. So it's wired into my earliest being. My neuroplasticity, my neural maps are before even birth. I am wired for stress. That is how energy drains in me. It doesn't cut to the left. It doesn't cut to the right. It goes down the stress lane. So now I'm feeling, wow, this is like interesting. I don't know what I'm going to do with this. And Sandy's saying, well, why don't you just get up? Don't you have a radio show to do this morning in a few minutes? I'm thinking, well, I don't know what to do with this, but this is great stuff. So I am predisposed to stress even from the womb. Not only am I predisposed to stress, but again, as I said, there were big issues going on. You know, there was the terminate the pregnancy issue. There was the separation of the separation of the resources, the stuff that they had, which wasn't anything, but my mom certainly didn't come away with anything except a newborn. She didn't come away with 2 cents. So all of that's going on, and then I'm wondering, wow, so maybe anxiety around safety and security, around control, all that stuff I'm experiencing, I'm drinking it in some sort of brew, some sort of chemical analog. I'm taking in adrenaline. I'm taking in all kinds of just some sort of chemical milkshake that is running through her blood is running through my blood. So let's put the clutch in on that for a second. So there I'm looking at, that's the push from the past, and it's powerful stuff. It's powerful stuff. On the other hand, there is the pull from the future as opposed to push from the past. There is that pull from the future. There is that whole quantum thing about expectation. Now, I have buddies who follow this show and who are probably going to write me big, nasty or letters or officious letters that say, there's no room for expectation. You have to be detached. And so I remember once I'm driving in the car and I'm listening to the radio, and there's Alan Watts. You remember Alan Watts? He had that fantastic FM English sort of voice, fantastic and philosopher dude. And he said one time on the radio that he had a student, or that he was a student maybe, and he went to a teacher and he said, I'm trying to blow off expectation. I think I would be much better served in life if I had no expectations. Then I wouldn't be disappointed. So it makes sense. So he goes to the teacher, or someone comes to him as the teacher, and the teacher says, interesting idea. Why don't you go away for a week and meditate on cutting free, losing expectation, and then we'll regroup. We'll talk about it. So a week or so comes by, they re-up again, and teacher says, so how did it go with the whole cutting loose of expectation thing? Now, how'd that work for you? And he scratches his head and he says, well, it was going pretty good, I thought, until I realized that I was expecting to lose expectation. Not only that, I was desiring to lose desire. And so it's like this sort of sticky, these sticky tar baby kind of things. And you put your hand on it, you're not going to let go of that. We don't let go of expectation, and we don't let go of desire. We are expecting, desiring creatures. It's possible, I think, that I could let go of expecting or desiring a particular outcome having to be in a particular way. I could let go of the control around it. But I don't think humans can let go of expectation per se, or there would be no quantum function in the world. And we can't let go of desire per se, or we would be that is a desire to let go of desire. In other words, we're not going to think our way out of thinking. Of too much thinking. We're not going to think our way out of too much thinking. So, as a function of creativity, then, I am creating drama for myself first thing in the morning because I'm threading back to past programmings. I can be aware of that and put the clutch on that. I can also think and tune in to the desires and the expectations, the quality of the kinds of being that I'd like to be aligned with. That's a pull from the future. And it seems to me that, here's a nod to you, Dad, both of those are facts. Thank you, Dad. Both of those are the facts. And I have a choice-making mechanism in between. In fact, I don't even have to make a clear choice between one or the other. I can actually hold them both simultaneously. It'd be like playing two different notes. And together, they blend and mix. They lift to a entirely different harmonic. They create something entirely new and virginal themselves. That, ipso facto, is a creative act. So holding on to the push from the past and the pull from the future simultaneously, that is itself another kind of creative act. So I guess where I'm going with all of this is that I want to, in real time with you all listening, I am reshaping my relationship, my creative relationship, with all of the ways that unconsciously and unconsciously that I find from the past to interrupt myself, to interrupt what is happening for me in the present moment. And as I become more and more aware of the interruptions, I know one thing for sure, that they are always all from the past. And I'm bringing them into the present. And now I have a true creative choice. Now I have an opportunity to create sublimely. On the shoulders of that knowing, I don't have to eliminate it, but I can add to it an expectation, a creative expectation from the future, and see where that leads me. So you're holding up some fingers there or something. Is that a countdown to a break?
We could go to a break and then come back and finish it up.
That's what we're going to do. That's a creative act. We will create a string of commercials right now for you, and we'll be back after these words.
consciousness, thought-provoking discussions, and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
We're back here, and we're going to see if we can pull some of these threads together. They don't have to be pulled together. That's another piece. We could just leave them all in a puddle on the floor. As long as nobody trips over them, we're going to be okay. But it's so wild. You know, what holds this past together? It's a lot easier to go and thread back to the past. It's much easier to create from the past. We have the conditioning. It's already laid in. We're familiar with it. It's habituated. And it's just a lot easier than it is to slow down, become aware that I'm threading to the past, and to choose and put some energy into forging a new habit. It's a lot easier to go back to what I know than it is to feel I'm feeling flowing, I'm feeling alive, and I don't really know why, but just for no reason, I want to do it. You know, I just hear the voice of my dad. There are facts. You got to have a reason. Happiness for no reason. That's, is something wrong with you. That's intellectually dubious. There's something wrong with you. And then there's that other piece. You know, you were saying, Spence, that you had a piece with your dad that, here he was from the greatest generation, and he liberated Auschwitz, and you're not saving the world. Here you are, you're a boy, and his dad saved the world, and you want to be a comedian, you want to write jokes.
It was funny because his brother, they were both in the war, and they were in the stuff, and they were there, and I had to compare the fact that I got into a fist fight, and I ran 15 miles training for cross country, and my dad did it with a rifle, and there's people shooting at him while you're
eating stew he bought, and he was eating rocks.
Yeah, and I couldn't say anything about it because I in my reality I couldn't compare to what he went through. And I just seemed like,
whoa!
I am zeroed out here, and that I will say that was very difficult.
Hey, listen, it's so illustrative because how is it that these patterns are held in place? They are held in place occasionally from a memory that is good, occasionally, but mostly they're held in place by fear. Or in your case, by shame. So here's your dad who says, "Hey, this is a life. You want to grow up and to be a comedian. You want to write jokes. I liberated Auschwitz." So there is no, you're gonna try and balance that out. The subtext of that is shame on you. You're not good enough. You're not enough. What kind of a loser are you? We all have our version of this. And it gets laid on and laid on and laid on and laid on. We don't have the same kind of relationship. We're not intimate with the future. So I am not carrying around a big old suitcase of woundings. I'm not carrying that around consciously. I know we all know people who do carry it around consciously. We all know the kind of person that's like constantly unpacking what happened to me and constantly unpacking how somebody did them wrong. I mean, we know those people. But most of us aren't like that. Most of us have a big old suitcase we carry around, and we don't know we're carrying it around. We don't know that I grew up under the roof provided by a dad who loved me as well as he could, a dad who went through his own stuff, a dad who achieved greatly in the world, and he didn't mean to shame me. But I put those pieces together, and sometimes they help. Sometimes they do have certain judgments. When I said I wanted to go into show business, they didn't say I liberated Auschwitz. Actually, they were all in Auschwitz, but they didn't say they were all liberating, saving the world. They said stuff like, "What are you going to do for Plan B when you fail?" Close parens. What are you going to do for Plan B? Open parens. When you fail, close parens. But you get that message. The message is, here's something that stirs my heart to excitement. But those around me who are the authority figures and those around me who are the caregivers from a very early age, that's not the first message of that kind that I ever got from my parents and caregivers and teachers and culture. I didn't get that message for the first time at 15 years old. I got it consistently that there are things that we think are plausible in the world and for you, and things we think are less plausible, and some things we think are ridiculous. You know, a poet in history is a miracle. At the dinner table, it's a joke. So we take on these messages, and we carry them around unbeknownst to us in a big old kind of psychic suitcase. And when things come up in the present that in any way are familiar, they trigger that the suitcase suddenly falls open and out comes a whole bunch of stuff that is like, it's almost cellular, that we remember that in some way is reminiscent of what is going on in the present. I don't have a suitcase of the future that I'm carrying around, although it might be said that the whole of God's creation is a suitcase of possibility, an infinite suitcase of possibility. But, it goes to show you how powerful that structured imagining is. One little suitcase, a few years with the family, and will take you out of the intimate embrace of the entire of creation. And that's not bad. I think it's the way it's supposed to be. I don't want to just be a recreator of what is. We come to a place where we begin to understand that. And then just maybe, begin to develop a relationship one-on-one, me and the whole of the universe, the whole of the future, all of the future possibilities, all of what is going on now, everything that is happening in my world that is beautiful and that is good and that is true. Not everything needs to thread back to where this is scary or that got scary. Anytime that happens, I'm threading back to the past. Anytime I have a thought that is not flow, I am threading back unconsciously to the past. That's a lot to swallow. I'm still chewing. I'm chewing like crazy to swallow that one. But I know that it's true. Anytime I have an interruption from the present flow, I am hearing from my past. And almost always I'm not aware of that. And almost always I'm not aware that it's my past that I'm hearing from. And so here's the choice. Here's the creative choice. I can either recreate out of the hurts, out of the hauntings of the ghosts of my past. And I don't even have to know them all. I just have to be aware that when I feel an obstacle, an interruption from the present, it is always from the past. So I have a choice to roll with that. I have another choice, which is to include, because it's too hard for me to just broom the whole of the past. I can't, I'm not going to say that I have the stuff required to broom the whole of the past, but I can make room for it. I'll just get a bigger suitcase, or I'll carry two. So yeah, I'm hearing from the past, and I can also begin to develop a relationship with all of the possibilities of the future, with all of the feelings of flow, the sense of being, of peace, of well-being, of being supported. Nature seems to do that. When I walk by the oak tree in front of my house, it doesn't look like it's shivering with terror. It looks like it's shivering in the ecstasy of the breeze that's blowing through it. That's a whole different way of being. And that, again, is the quantum way of being. The quantum is what happens, that particle shows up as matter in time and space because we expect it to. And if we don't expect it to, it doesn't show up. It remains a possibility pattern. So whatever I expect, and if I have learned to expect my past to recreate itself because I'm constantly carrying it around and anticipating it, then I'm going to keep recreating it. To answer your question, Spence, about why is this freaking thing happening yet again? But if I add to it an expectation that I matter, the world is a place that's going to work with me if I can get out of my own way. There are people that love me. I have friends that I care about. I have work that is meaningful to me. I have listeners that I enjoy engaging with. That these satisfactions are themselves expectations, and they're causal. They're creative acts. They're creative acts. And with that, I have a feeling that we have pretty much come to the end. So one thing that I want to remind all of our listeners of is that Cutting Edge Consciousness is made possible with support from Hierophant Publishing and Insight Events USA, producers of books and events for body, mind, and spirit. We hope that you will check out the offerings from these fine people, and look forward to being back with you again next week here on Cutting Edge Consciousness. Have a great week.